tere! Siin Vanglaplaneet ja Peeter Proos. Täna on 11. detsember ning ma tahaks natuke rääkida sellest, mis toimub Süürias ning puudutab ISISt, USA'd, Türgit ja Venemaad. Selge on, et Eesti massimeedia tarbjale püütakse luua kuvandit, kus USA valitsuse üllaks eesmärgiks on Süürias korda luua ning maha suruda nii Assadi kui ISISt ning Venemaa vaid segab ja on USA sõjavägedele pinnuks silmas, kuna pommitatakse ka neid kohti, mida USA valitsus teatud põhjustel pommitada ei soovi. Aga mis on need teatud põhjused? Kui eestlased hirmutatakse pidevalt sellega, et Venemaal on imperialistlikud plaanid ning Putin võtab Nõukogude Liitu taga, siis vaatame korra, millised on USA plaanid ja milline on nende jõudude olemus. Need eesmärgid on väga kenasti kokku võtnud kindral Wesley Clark, kes on endine USA sõjaväelane ja poliitik ning ka NATO Euroopa vägede juhataja. Ja 2000. aastal sai see mees Eesti Kotkaristi esimese klassi teenetemärgi. Nii et tegemist ei ole mitte vandenõuteoreetikuga, vaid väga auväärse mehega. Paljud on kindlasti seda videot ka juba näinud, aga nagu öeldakse, siis kordamine on tarkuse ema.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the joint staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
Nii, ehk siis kuna Lähis-Idas on naftat, siis on USA valitsuse eesmärgiks seal piirkonnas kukutada valitsus ja kontroll enda kätte saada, kaasa arvatud Süürias. Muidugi tuleb siinkohal märkida, et USA valitsuse all ei mõtlema Ameerikat ja Ameerika rahvast. USA valitsuse ja ka sõjaväe on kaaperdanud seesama uus maailmakord, ehk siis globaalne finants- ja võimueliit. Samuti ei taha ma öelda, et Venemaa endast mitte mingisugust ohtu ei kujuta, kuid hetkel on palju ohtlikum see, mida need uue maailmakorra onud plaanivad. Ning tundub, et ka Venemaa on nendega hädas. Aga sellest, milliseid taktikaid USA valitsus globaalse kontrolli saavutamiseks kasutab, rääkis Lew Rockwelli saates Sibel Edmonds, kes on endine FBI tõlk ja kes mõni aeg tagasi murdis oma vaikimisvannet ning paljastas selle, milline oli USA valitsuse roll 9/11 korraldamisel. Aga nüüd siis natukene ISISest.
Sibel Edmonds is one of those polymaths on foreign affairs and intelligence matters. She could talk about 101 different things, but today we're going to talk about what the empire is doing in Turkey, in the Kurdish areas, and in that part of the world, and why ISIS is not some terrorist group that sprung up out of the soil just by magic, but was actually a creation of the U.S.
Well, you hit the highlight of the issue, the topic of what has been happening in Turkey, with Syria, with the what they call the Kurdish issue. And yes, the empire has been very successful, highly successful, to maintain the divide and chaos in the region for the ultimate purpose of dominance in the region. And for that, of course, it has been playing various chess pieces, and many of these chess pieces are part of the empire side, not as it is being talked about in the mainstream media as either independent actors such as ISIS or Assad's regime per se.
And of course, they've murdered an unbelievable number of people in Syria, and the people that the U.S. is supporting to overthrow Assad and company have promised that they're going to ethnically cleanse the few remaining Christians who have lived successfully in Syria since the time of the apostles, many of them already pushed out. They'll push out the remainder and probably kill many more. And they also intend to kill all the Alawites. It's the Muslim sect that Assad and his family belong to. So there's going to be much more blood on the empire's hands, but I guess they like it. They must enjoy it. They must be the sort of figures who actually enjoy killing people, bombing, destroying, wrecking. They must get a charge out of it.
Absolutely. I have been using the term I coined. I call it ISIS or us.
Huh.
Right, because it is. And this is not any kind of a speculation or conspiracy theory. In 2011, between October and December of 2011, at a BFP report, Boiling Frogs Post, we broke exclusive news story about U.S. NATO forces in southern Turkey. U.S. has a base. It's called Incirlik Base. It's in southern Turkey. It's close to the Syrian border, Turkey-Syria border region. And that the fact that based on sources in Turkey, and these include the military sources in Turkey and two sources here with U.S. military, we broke the story about how the United States NATO Turkish forces were bringing in these factions from Syria into the base, training them, military training, arming them, and then funneling them back into Syria for the purpose of creating this chaos and also this entire opposition to Assad. Well, whatever they say today and whatever the US media is saying is absolutely contrary to the facts, to the truth. These are the people we trained for this exact purpose. It started as ISIL and then became ISIS, now short IS. These are the people, many of them, thousands of them. We, United States, together with NATO forces and Turkish, with the cooperation of the Turkish forces, we brought them into Turkey, we trained them, we armed them, and we funneled them back into Syria. So now they are trying, the media and the United States, the Western world, they are trying to distinguish between ISIS and some real opposition to Assad in Syria. And then, of course, there's this faction, the question of the Kurdish faction there, who have been also armed and trained by the United States, who are saying that they are fighting against ISIS, but actually ISIS is on our side. So you are looking at this complete chaos and mess that was artificially designed per plans and put in place for the ultimate goal of moving forward with the imperial pursuits. Yet, when you look at the media, and unfortunately, the takeoff, the majority here, thanks to the media and what they are being fed, we are looking at a replacement brand for Al Qaeda. In fact, this is what I have been talking about, writing about lately. This is changing one brand to another brand. It's all about marketing, and it exhibits main marketing features in it. When one brand starts losing its reach and its power, sometimes you change your logo, you rebrand your product or what you're doing, your service. And that's exactly what we have been doing with this phenomena called ISIS. And if you look at the marketing scheme, it's not different. In fact, it is identical to the marketing promotional methods that we practiced, the United States, together with its arm in the media with Al Qaeda. I just put together.
nii, ehk siis ISIS on samuti Al-Qaeda järeltulija ja USA algatatud eesmärgiga destabiliseerida olukorda ja seeläbi saavutada kontroll piirkonna üle. Ja kui USA valitsust on avalikult süüdistatud selles, et ta toetab ISIS-t, siis vabanduseks on toodud, et nad toetavad vaid Assaadi vastaseid, nii-öelda mõõdukaid mässulisi. Aga siinkohal tekib küsimus, et millised on need mõõdukad ja millised mitte, ning kuskohast saab ISIS oma Ameerika relvad ja varustuse, millega nad lugematutel YouTube'i videodel uhkustavad. Ja siia veel üks tore lõik sellest, kuidas Kissinger küll natukene häbelikult tunnistab, et ISIS saab oma relvad USA käest.
Let's switch gears to ISIS, if you don't mind, sir. General Petraeus earlier this week had all but said and told me we're losing. Not that we can't eventually win, but we're not doing well. Do you agree with that? That they have the upper hand? ISIS has the upper hand.
The fundamental problem is this. ISIS is about 30,000 irregulars. They're not technically trained to fight. They have only the heavy equipment that they capture from us or from forces that we have armed. So if they can stand.
Niimoodi. Kuid ega sellega asi ei lõpe, see ei ole ainuke koht, kust USA ISISele abiks on. ISISe üks peamisi sissetuluallikaid on varastatud nafta müügist saadud raha ning üks põhilisi kohti, kuhu nad seda müüvad, on Türgi. Türgi, mis on pikaaegne NATO liige ja USA liitlane ning mis peaks samuti ISISe vastu võitlema, mitte sellega äri ajama, nagu järgmisest lõigust väga kenasti välja tuleb.
Now, Russia's Air Force has stepped up its efforts against Islamic State's main source of income, namely the terrorist oil empire. The illegal crude is smuggled into Turkey on an industrial scale. Jihadists make millions of dollars selling cheap crude on the black market, making ISIL the richest terrorist organization possibly ever. Ankara has denied ever buying Islamic State's oil. Let's discuss this in more depth now with Dr. Mowaffaq Al-Rubai, member of the Iraqi parliament and the country's former national security advisor. Dr. Al-Rubai, many thanks for joining us on RT. What do you personally know about the extent of ISIL's oil smuggling into Turkey?
In the last 8 months, ISIS has managed to sell what's worth $800 million worth of oil in the black market of Turkey. This is Iraqi oil and Syrian oil, and these are carried by trucks from Iraq, from Syria, through the borders to Turkey, and sold in a less than 50% of the international oil price. So it's always sold. It has been always sold in the region of $20 to $21, $22 for the barrel. Now this either get consumed inside, the crude is refined in the on the Turkish territory by the Turkish refineries and sold in the Turkish market, or it goes to Jihan and then in the pipelines from Jihan to the Mediterranean and sold to the international market. So the ISIS has made a lot of money. This is like oxygen, you know. Once you cut the oxygen, then the ISIS will suffocate. And this is the oxygen supply, money and the dollars generated by selling Iraqi and Syrian oil in the Turkish black market is like the oxygen supply to ISIS and its operation. Now this is.
Nii, nüüd natuke sellest, mis juhtus Vene pommitajaga, mis alla tulistati. Nagu öeldud, siis ega USA-le ei meeldi, et mida Venemaa Süürias teeb. Ja väidetavalt pommitavad venelased neid jõude, keda siis USA toetab. Ehk siis neid Assadi vastaseid mõõdukaid äärmuslasi. Aga kui senaator McCaini käest küsiti, et mida sellises olukorras teha, siis tema arvas, et oleks hea variant, kui need lennukid alla tulistataks.
Senator, if you were president in the middle of all of this, and you know, or you're charging as you did just now, and I assume you know more than I do, that the Russian fighters are targeting the very groups we are trying to help, would you shoot down those Russian planes?
No, but I would certainly make it clear. Well, I would do a whole lot of things. General David Petraeus testified before the Armed Services Committee 2 weeks ago. He laid out what we need to do. We need to stop the barrel bombing. We need to have a no-fly zone. We need to have a buffer zone for refugees. We need to provide certain kinds of help.
No, I know that, Senator, but if they're attacking the very guys who we want to see topple Assad, you would let American planes just continue to pass them and let them do that?
No, but I might do what we did in Afghanistan many years ago to give those guys the ability to shoot down those planes. That equipment is available.
Who would be shooting them down?
The Free Syrian Army, just like the Afghans shot down the Russian. No, just like the Afghans shot down Russian planes after Russia invaded Afghanistan.
But you hear what I'm saying? I mean, you could.
Olgu. Aga oletame siis korraks, et USA püüab tõepoolest ISISe vastu võidelda. Kuidas nad seda teevad ning kuidas see neil välja tuleb. Et üks väheseid kordi, kui ISISe naftakolonni pommitati, ka siis hoiatati veokijuhte ette, et nad saaksid põgeneda. Tsiviilkaotuste vältimiseks heitsid USA lennukid enne õhurünnakut veokikolonnile lendlehti, milles kutsuti juhte veokitest põgenema. Huvitav, et erinevate lauspommitamiste ajal Afganistanis ja Iraagis ei teatutud tsiviilisikuid sellest ette. Siis ei olnud nagu lastest ja naistest kellelgi sooja ega külma. Ja teine moodus on siis väidetavalt terrorismi rahastamise tõkestamine. Selle koha pealt, et Türgi ISISe naftat ostab ning miljonitega terroriste toetab, pigistatakse silm kinni ja vahele võetakse pisipätte või neid, kellel pole terrorismi rahastamisega üldse mingit pistmist. Nagu näiteks need 2 Vene kodakondsusega meest, kes väidetavalt tegelesid terrorismi toetamisega. Kas nad on süüdi või mitte, seda ma ei tea, ei oska öelda, aga jutt käib vaid mõnest 1000 eurost. See on ju naeruväärne ja näitab selgelt, et USA terrorismi vastane sõda on vaid näitemäng avalikkuse jaoks. Kuna Pariisis on hetkel käimas suur kliimakonverents, siis panen siia lõppu veel ühe lõbusa lõigu sellest, kuidas senaator Sanders on üsna kindel, et globaalne soojenemine tekitab terrorismi. Huvitav, kas varsti peetakse ka hõõglambi soetamist terrorismile kaasa aitamiseks. Ja muide, Putin ütles alles mõni aeg tagasi, et inimtekkelise globaalse soojenemise jutt on jama ning selle eesmärgiks on piirata mõnede riikide tööstuslikku arengut, mis ju täpselt nii ongi. Aga kuna seda räägib Putin, siis on see loll jutt ja võimalik, et ka vandenõuteooria. Olgu, see on juba natuke teine teema, aga siin siis senaator Sanders.
Joining us now from Des Moines is Democratic presidential candidate and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders, I want to ask you, pick up right where we left off last night. You mentioned that climate change, in fact, is related to terrorism. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, that's not only my observation, John. That is what the CIA and the Department of Defense tells us. And the reason is pretty obvious. If we are going to see an increase in drought and flooding and extreme weather disturbances as a result of climate change, What that means is that peoples all over the world are going to be fighting over limited natural resources. If there is not enough water, if there is not enough land to grow your crops, then you're going to see migrations of people fighting over land that will sustain them. And that will lead to international conflict. So I think when we talk about all of the possible ravages of climate change, which to my mind is just a huge planetary crisis, increased international conflict is one of the issues that we have got to appreciate will happen.
But how does drought connect with attacks by ISIS in the middle of Paris?
Well, what happens, say, in Syria, for example, and there's some thought about this, is that when you have drought, when people can't grow their crops, they're going to migrate into cities. And when people migrate into cities and they don't have jobs, there's going to be a lot more instability, a lot more unemployment, and people will be subject to the types of propaganda that Al-Qaeda and ISIS are using right now. So where you have discontent, where you have instability, that's where problems arise. And certainly, without a doubt, climate change will lead to that.
Nii, kuhu ma selle kõigega jõuda tahan? Ühesõnaga, läbi meedia hirmutatakse meid nii Venemaaga kui terroristidega. Ja seda tehakse täpselt senikaua, kuni me seda usume ja seda mängu kaasa mängime. Niipea kui inimesed mõistavad, kes selle taga on ning millised on nende tegelikud eesmärgid, siis nende nipid enam ei toimi. Heaks näiteks on need sõjaväelased siin, kes ei soovinud olla Al-Qaeda sõdurid. Kuid suur tänu kuulamast, vaatamast ja kaasa mõtlemast. Mina olen Peeter Proos. Külastage kindlasti Vanglaplaneedi veebilehte. Veel on saada Vanglaplaneedi logoga mälupulki, koos filmiga vaktsineerida ning samuti igasugust muud nänni. Kuulmiseni!
Või ma viskan su televiisori välja su köögiaknast, no võid ma viskan su televiisori välja su köögiaknast.